Welcome to the Education Marketing Leader podcast with Chris Rapozo. If you're looking to dive into the latest industry insights, draw inspiration from education success stories, or just want to sharpen your marketing skills, you're in the right place. Here, we bring you a diverse range of voices from experts and leaders in the field, offering you a unique blend of professional development and practical strategies. Whether you want to understand your audience better, stay updated with the latest tech trends in marketing, or expand your professional network, we've got you covered. So while you're driving on your morning commute or winding down after a busy day, let's explore the dynamic world of education marketing together.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Education Marketing Leader with Chris Rapozo. Today, my guest is Christian Klepp. He's the co-founder and director of client engagement of Einblick Consulting and the host of the B2B Marketers on a Mission podcast. Today's episode is from generic messaging to market relevance in higher education. Christian, welcome to the show.
Chris, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I know that title is a mouthful, and I appreciate it.
Well, it's good to have you. Christian's originally from Austria, so I wore my red and white.
I noticed. I noticed.
All for you, Christian, my friend.
I appreciate it.
So, Christian, during our pre-interview, you mentioned that many universities struggle to answer a simple question. Mm-hmm. Why should this student choose us? Why do so many institutions still default to generic messaging instead of building a clear market position?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. And secondly, I think the simple answer, and this can be very complicated, but the simple answer is because many of these institutions, from my experience, are still run by people who are academics and not marketers. So they don't see things through a marketing lens. So for them, this positioning and this generic messaging, it all makes sense, right? And for their marketing teams, I think one of the things that I've been seeing is that they still, not everybody, but many of them are still using these outdated tactics. And it's basically that whole mentality of, what got us here will get us there. So they're basically still putting out content that talks about, and I know you're going to cringe when I say this, but history, tradition, our achievements. But, all of that content, and I think we had this conversation before, all of that content glorifies the institution. But unfortunately, that doesn't really help the potential student who's contemplating which university to go to. Because, let's be honest, in the United States alone, it's not like they don't have any choice, right? Mm-hmm. There's an abundant amount of choices, right? So how do these institutions stand out? And if they are all saying the same message, and many of them are, because let's be honest, many of them are using the historical aspect of it. Many of them are talking about their long-held traditions and what they've achieved. But how does that help the student who is still deciding which university to go to, right? And the problem now is if you sound like everybody else, how do you stand out, right? So, and to the second point, building a market position. So based on that, right, building a clear market position, it requires institutions to make difficult decisions. And what I mean by that is, and I know this sounds so counterintuitive in marketing, but it's true. For example, deciding who do we not serve, right? Mm-hmm. Because let's not try to appeal to everybody. And also, let's be real. I'm just going to use the most predictable example here. But not everybody can get into Harvard, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not just from a monetary perspective. From an academic perspective too. You have to have a certain grade point average. Your SAT scores have to be, of a certain value. And for somebody like myself, who's from a country where the official language is not English, you have to ace the TOEFL test and the TWE, right?
Yeah, generic messaging falls flat in this environment. With the leadership aspect that you brought into the conversations earlier, that the academics run the marketing, even though they have a marketing department, right? It probably has to go through the committee that is run by academics. And then the final approval comes from the ones that are not marketers.
That's it.
Is there realistically for higher ed marketers who are here any way to go around that or advocate for leadership that are marketers in those institutions? Because you have the leaders in front of you, can't do anything about it. If you know your hands are tied, basically.
I think the word that we're looking for here is buy-in, right?
Mm.
We're trying to get buy-in from senior leadership, and for these people, they're certainly of a certain rank and caliber, and they're very accomplished individuals, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't be in those positions. So I think with those people, to be able to win them over, you have to come with evidence. And what I mean by evidence is you have to come with proof that what you are initiating, what you've implemented from a marketing perspective is actually working. Because if you come with something abstract, and unfortunately we marketers, we sometimes fall into this trap that we build ourselves, right? Of like just dropping all these acronyms that nobody else outside marketing understands, right? Or coming with data that nobody else is able to interpret. So we have to, as marketers and as people who are responsible for communication, we ourselves have to understand how to communicate properly and understand who we're communicating it to. And I know that sounds like marketing 101, but like understanding the audience, right? If your audience is the board, who are academics, okay, what is it that the board of the university understands and cares about? That's what the marketer needs to find out, right? And what evidence can you bring, ideally statistically, sometimes qualitative will work too, that you can bring to prove your point, right? Because they need to be convinced that this will be successful. They need to be convinced with hard facts to win them over.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You got to build trust. Like you have to build trust with your audience. You have to build trust
Absolutely.
with your leadership team, and that takes a
Absolutely.
lot of time, right? We're in
Yeah.
marketing. We know that we have to be patient with our audience because it takes a certain amount of time for somebody to buy into our offering. And the same when you start, or if you have a new leadership coming in, it
Yep.
takes time. And somebody like me who's very impatient, that could be a difficult assignment. But if you want to move the brand forward, you'll have to go in there with patience, leave the ego at the door, and become a
Absolutely.
teacher yourself for the people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you're struggling with patience, I can teach you some breathing exercises that will that will help slow things down.
There you go. I'll tag Christian after this so you can have him consult you. Leave exercises and how to relax. You made an interesting distinction between institutional facts and actual brand perception. At what
Yeah.
point does a university stop being a school and start becoming a brand people emotionally identify with? You mentioned Harvard earlier. We have a certain feeling about Harvard when we hear that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a good question. I've been thinking about this one long and hard. And I think the way that I would answer that is a university goes from being a school to becoming an emotional brand when it goes beyond the academia, when it stops just being a provider of education. I mean, that's almost a given, right? Like, I mean, that's 100% a given. If you're going to university, there's education. But when does it go beyond that, right? When does it transform into something that's linked to the social identity fabric? When does it become a repository for personal memory? And what do I mean by that? Like, if I'm not mistaken, you went to the University of Florida, am I right? Yeah. What comes to your mind when you think of that school?
Excellence. When you become a gator, you think of all the people that came before you, and
Right.
as a bar you sit and you kind of like, if you're in the marketplace, you represent that school and that brand, and you're
Yeah.
like, I have to match the people that came before me. So it's kind of like a push there for me. I feel like I need to make sure that I represent that school
Exactly.
the way I should.
Exactly. But you see, obviously you there was education in there somewhere, but you mentioned a lot of other things that went far beyond that, right? Because in your mind, you've already built this image of what the school is, because it's so much more than just a place where you went to read your degree. It's where you formed friendships, where you were parts of you participated in sports, you were parts of social clubs, right? So the moment a university goes to that level, right, that's when it's shifted to a brand that people can emotionally identify with, because there's a sense of belonging, right?
Yeah.
There's the construction of identity, and the one I think that many U.S. universities are so good at, identity signaling. And what I mean by that is, like, if you go out on a Sunday, how many people do you see wearing university merch? caps, sweaters, right? So there's that aspect of it too. There's people that wear that because they're proud of where they went to school.
Yeah, I mean, I live in Georgia, and it's a big rival to the Florida, this University of Florida. And when I
Yeah,
walk around with my Florida gear, people are like, "Ooh, you got some, you're brave walking
yeah,
around with this stuff."
yeah,
It's
yeah,
almost like enemy territory. It's crazy.
yeah, yeah. But this is going back to that whole point about how to build an emotional brand, right? Because
Yeah.
it's so much more than just the institution now, right?
And the funny thing is, I went through the online department of the University of Florida, so I
Yeah.
did it from a distance, but I
Okay.
still lived in Florida. But just, being surrounded by Gators, being invited back to campus, being made feel,
Yeah.
important, being able to give a keynote to leadership once with my family in the crowd,
Mm,
it's something that weaves into the fabric of the bigger institution, and a moment I will never forget for the rest of my life. And
absolutely.
my aspiration is now for my kids to go there because they've experienced it,
Yeah.
and travel there, do a pilgrimage to some of the football games in the fall.
That's right. That's right. And that happens in many families, Chris, right? Like there's many families where it gets passed on to the next generation where like, your grandfather went to that university, so the father goes and then the son. And sometimes it creates rivalry when the father went to one university and the son decides to go to the rival university, right?
Yep. That's what we see. I don't know if you know Peyton Manning. He's a
Hmm.
quarterback. So his father was a NFL quarterback. Him and his brother, they were both NFL quarterback. But Peyton Manning was the oldest son.
Yeah.
And it was tradition that they would go to the University of Mississippi,
Okay.
where the dad went, but he went to the University of Tennessee as a big outcry. Oh my gosh,
Oh,
why would he go there? But then the younger
yeah.
brother went to Ole Miss and
Yeah.
kept that going. So yeah, it's a
Yeah.
big pride, especially in the universities that are R1 bigger schools,
Yeah.
where there's a history
Yeah.
and a tradition there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. Quick break to tell you about my new book that I co-authored with Rob Clark called The Attention Gap: Why Great Schools Stay Invisible and How to Fix It. We wrote it for higher ed marketers, enrollment leaders, and anyone trying to reach students in today's noisy, scroll-happy world. It's built from 130 plus episodes and conversations with higher ed leaders from this show, plus Rob's experience growing that tall family to over 4 billion views online. We unpack why the old marketing playbook isn't working any longer and what you can do about it instead to fix that. If your team is serious about closing the gap between great programs and real visibility online, this book is for you. Grab your copy of The Attention Gap today on Amazon. And now, back to the episode.
Talked about the importance of understanding market niches and audience psychology. What are higher ed marketers still misunderstanding about today's prospective student journeys?
Again, this is going to sound like marketing 101, but like what I think that they're completely misunderstanding is they are still rolling out some of these outdated marketing initiatives, and they are still sticking to like, okay, what they've been doing for a long time that they felt was successful. But what they're failing to see is that the student journey has evolved, right? The if you look at like the past 20 years, right, the way the behaviors, the journey that people go on to decide what university or institution they want to go to, that's changed, right? Because prospective students nowadays, and you and I have had a conversation about this, right? They're very tech savvy. I mean, this current generation is the generation of social media and AI, right? So, and most of what they discover about universities is not going to be by looking at the university's website. They're doing their research on social media platforms. They're looking at Facebook. They're looking at TikTok. They're going and seeing YouTube shorts, doing AI searches, all of those things, right? And I know there's for those of you that are listening to the audio version of this, Chris has a really big grin on his face because this is like also his area of excellence, right? And you deal with this all the time. And this is how they're doing research. And why are they doing it this way? Because they know that if they go to the university website, it's going to be told from the university's perspective. And of course, they're going to say that we're a good school, right? But if they go on social media, people are a little bit more raw, unfiltered. They will share their experience, positive and negative, because this is all part of that that research process, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Absolutely. You have the website to verify. People go to website to verify, right?
yeah.
And if you want raw and unfiltered perspectives on your institution, you go to Reddit, because people
Right.
can't hide behind an alias. So there, it's the Wild West there. I mean,
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. They just open the floodgates and just
yes, I'm
right.
very apprehensive of going to Reddit. I don't want to get my feelings hurt.
Yeah, but that said, and I think this is there's also a word of caution here, right? Because everything that you see, you have to take it with a pinch of salt, right? Like, don't believe everything that you see on social media. There's a lot of there's a lot of these. I could go on and on about this, but there's a lot of like tactics that people are deploying out there, and they're not necessarily done with the best intentions. They're done as clickbait, rage bait.
Rage bait.
Yeah, AI generated videos that are telling a completely incorrect tale, right? So you have to be wary of that too. And that's why also I believe fact checking is going to be extremely important if it's not already.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
From reputable sources. I've seen some of these AI influencers, and it's wild how realistic they look.
Oh yeah, it's scary.
What? It is scary.
Scary.
It's almost like if somebody looks too perfect, they're probably AI.
Yeah. So there's a lot of pros and cons to this new approach, right?
It is. It is. And there's the temptation to just go all in as well on your side and just
Yes.
do AI created stuff. But
Yeah.
people get more savvy, and they kind of, I mean, it's hard to differentiate, but there are certain things that are pointers, right? When you hear the voice, you
Yeah.
can kind of identify, okay, this is probably AI
Yeah.
generated. And especially younger generations, they have a filter for that. I mean, my 7-year-old, he's like, well, that's AI. That's AI. You can tell. It's crazy. It's funny to me too, like how they can spot that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because they're growing up with it,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
In our previous conversations, you brought up personas and customer journeys, but many enrollment teams still treat those as surface level exercises. You know, you go to a conference, you do a workshop, and then you move on. What does a genuinely useful student persona framework actually looks like in practice?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's one that irks me a lot because people, especially when people don't do it properly, right? Because because I understand and I appreciate that people are under a time crunch and there's limited resources and limited budget. And I can't think of any industry that I've worked with where that isn't the case, right? But that being said, I think it's still important to do that very strategic foundation work. Because if you skip that, or if you skim through it, right? So skip and skim, right? If you skim through it and just do a quick exercise to say, okay, we've done the persona, check. We've done the buyer's journey, check. And then you leave it somewhere, and to use that dated adage, it collects dust. Why? Because it's not being used, right? What an actual persona should look like is, okay, first and foremost, you should actually go and interview these prospective customers, right? Interview in the higher ed case prospective students.
Yeah.
Ideally you should anywhere between 20 to 30 is a good sample size.
Oh wow.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah. What you should do then after that is create a persona that doesn't look like something you see on HubSpot, right? Like frustrated Frank and Marketing Mary. Those personas definitely don't help you, right? What you should come up with is a persona that goes beyond the generic demographics and psychographics.
Yeah.
What you should also dive deep into, and after you've interviewed such a sample size, you should be able to like see some patterns, right? And what I mean by that is like, okay, what does an average day for these people look like, right? Most especially, like, zero in on, okay, what is their biggest aspiration? So, okay, let's come up with a very simple example here. Their aspiration is they want to get into a good university, right? I'm making it sound easier than it is, but like, okay, let's just, for the sake of conversation. Okay, so if they want to do that, okay, so what is their criteria? What's their selection criteria? Well, because, People will have a different interpretation of I want to get into a good school. Well, define good.
Right.
Narrow that down. What does that selection criteria look like? Okay, and now where are you going to go to find information that will help you make an informed decision? What are those touch points in your journey, right, that you're looking at? How much time do you spend at each of those touch points? Which touch points do you avoid? Why? Right? Why don't you think that channel is useful? And whatever the reason is. And what will make this, to use the North American term, what would make this a home run for you? What are your preferences? What do you object to? Like what is it that would put you off if you saw this, or if you saw this information out there about a particular university? Put all that together into a persona, and then from there, map out the buyer's journey across the different stages, from the first point of contact to the time that they've actually made a decision, right? And map out the touch points and highlight the ones that are where they spend the most time on. Those are the important ones.
Yep.
And marketing teams that do that exercise will then understand, okay, so in the 20 touch points that they had, there were 8 of them that they thought were important. Well, maybe that's where we should focus our marketing budget and our marketing efforts.
Yeah.
And these ones over here were not so important. This one they avoid at all costs because of these are the reasons. So this is where we shouldn't focus on. I'm oversimplifying it now, but I'm just giving you an example of, especially with past collaborations, how I've seen when you're doing this properly, how that also informs what the marketing team can do. When they put out content, print it out. Again, to use that outdated term, but print it out and stick it on the wall. That's who you're talking to.
That's right.
Right?
That's a good framework right there. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
For sure. I'd spend most of the time on the pricing page if I were a parent looking for a university for my kid.
Absolutely.
And where can I get the discounts? And
Right.
what can you do after the fact, right? Once they got the degree, what kind of jobs do they get? Career readiness. It's very important.
Absolutely.
So we talked about this earlier a little bit. Some universities dominate attention despite not necessarily being the best academic. What separates institutions that become culturally relevant from those that become interchangeable? Is it a good football program, or what is it?
The answer is it depends, right? I mean, it depends on it depends on your definition of what a good school is, right? But I think what institutions that become culturally relevant, as opposed to being merely like functional or interchangeable, they differentiate themselves by evolving again from being providers of services into actually someone that places great emphasis on community. They become creators of meaning, creators of identity. So they move beyond what you see as the very rigid, like archaic top-down structure, and they're embracing things like adaptability, genuine connection, representation. So I would say good examples of those are big surprise. Some of the art schools, Fashion Institute of Technology in New York, Rhode Island School of Design. So that's a specific that those institutions have specific symbolism. UCLA, right? Big school, right? And I know that, but they moved from just merely being this very structured institution to one that actually, has a very strong identity around it.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. And social proof is so important too, right?
Yes.
If you have your peers talking about how great this place is, you may consider it over another one that you haven't heard as much testimonials of. Just because people buy from people and,
That's it.
and trust the ones that already been through the process. And if they tell you, hey, I had a good experience, this is how I was set up for success, means a lot more, like you said, if when the institution pushes the narrative.
That's it.
We're skeptical with everything
Yeah.
these days, what we see online, whether it's politics, higher education, the news, we don't believe it anymore because we've been lied to too much.
That's it. And I think just to go back to what we were talking about earlier on in the conversation, they have to move away from like just thinking about the institutions as this old building, right? And focus on the people aspect of it, right? Because certainly the institution as a building is part of it, but what makes that institution so culturally relevant will be the people that are in it, right?
That's right. That's right. But we both know about buildings, old buildings, being from Europe,
Yeah,
Austria,
yeah,
and
yeah.
Germany, and there's a certain reverence for, at least for me, when I go through an older building and I can feel the energy from people walk through these walls, these halls 100 years ago.
Yep.
There's something to be said about that, but not if you're doing the online research on the institution, you're not feeling it, obviously.
Yeah.
But once you're there, maybe. I was down at the University of Florida a couple of weeks ago, and they have new buildings, super new buildings, but they have some of the old buildings too. And I met with one of the marketing communication leaders at the University of Florida, and her office is in one of the older buildings. And you walk in, you can smell it, right? You can smell it's an older building. You can feel it in the walls. You're like, this place has been here for years.
Okay.
One of the legends has walked through here. It's kind of like the energy you feel like. It's almost like walking into a cathedral.
Yeah.
And it hits you. So I think that's why having these campus tours are so important as well. And people, I always hear, if you get them on campus for a tour, they're probably going to enroll when they feel that energy.
Yeah.
You got to find a way to transmit that digitally.
Absolutely.
When you market.
Absolutely. I love how you mentioned that, this is an old building and it's been around for 50 years. And, back in Europe, it's like this building has been here since 1526. But,
Yes, for American standards. Because we don't see that anymore. Everything's so new.
No, that's right. That's right.
There's often a tension between marketing teams, leadership, enrollment, and external agencies. And you've mentioned a little bit earlier about academics being on top and then the marketers a little bit lower,
Yeah.
Now, why is alignment so difficult in higher education branding, and what do the strongest institutions do differently internally?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And, it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, right? But alignment can be exceptionally difficult in higher ed because the universities are very complex ecosystems. They can be also very decentralized, and they have this decentralization also comes with conflicting agendas. Fragmented sub-brands, so you have schools and departments that maybe are not speaking the same language. And also, you have a culture, right, that prices academic freedom over corporate style or unified messaging. So there's a lot of moving parts here, right? There's a lot of reasons why why alignment is. I wouldn't say it's an exercise in futility, but it almost sounds like Mission Impossible, right? But what do the stronger institutions do differently? And what we mean by stronger institutions, obviously, are the institutions where, despite having people from different backgrounds and different departments and what have you, there is some strong alignment, there is a strong vision, and everybody's like, to use a sports term, rowing in the same direction, right? So what do they do differently? I think what they do differently is, number one, they build internal buy-in and there's ownership, right? This isn't just passed around to, well, I thought that was marketing's job, or I thought that was this person's job. So going from decentralization to centralization, but having some kind of flexibility too, right? Because centralization in my mind doesn't mean rigid structure. It just means, okay, let's get everybody on the same page, and let's make sure that we're going in the same direction here. The third point, which I think is really important, which I think some universities tend to overlook, is aligning the student experience with what the university promised them, right? Aligning the student experience with the brand promise, right? Leveraging, and I think this is an important one for marketers, leveraging data to tell authentic stories. So what is the data telling us that we feel everybody else needs to know, right? And a final point, which I think is also very important, not always easy in implementation, is consistent, transparent internal communication. Right? Brush all the politics aside, and I know it can become a pretty hairy situation, right? Yeah. But brush all that aside, have some transparency, and have the communication being consistent, right?
Yeah. No, that's really good advice. So,
yeah.
We talked about the bigger schools quite a bit here,
Yeah,
but smaller institutions often feel like they can't compete against massive
yeah,
brands like
sure.
Harvard, Princeton, the flagship universities. Where do
Mm.
you think smaller schools have an advantage in today's market?
Yeah, and I'm gonna go to the I think this might be the overused phrase of the year, but like the riches are in the niches, right?
Mm,
And that's where I think they have an advantage, right? Like going back to, I think was the first point in this conversation, focusing on who they serve and also being cognizant of who they don't serve, right?
hmm
So, and that's where I think they have an advantage. They focus on a niche and they specialize in it. So, just to give an example, and these aren't like the big famous. Well, some of them are, but like so there's one Babson College in Wellesley, Massachusetts. So that one is known as the educator of entrepreneurial leaders. So people go there if they're interested in entrepreneurship. There's Colorado College. And so they're known for something which they call the block plan. So that's basically where students take on one course at a time for 3.5 weeks, right? So immersive, focused learning, right? And it differentiates them from, like, say, liberal arts schools. One case study which I found really interesting, and you touched on it a little bit earlier, is one in Georgia. It's called the Savannah College of Art and Design, or SCAD, right? So they position themselves as a direct pipeline to people who are pursuing a creative career, right? So all of these, there's many, many more, but those are three examples. But I think they all have three characteristics in mind, or basically three characteristics that they are all that they're all effectively utilizing, right? So they're hyper focused. They're community oriented, and that's how they leverage their marketing. It's a very community oriented marketing, and the messaging is consistent, right? So Babson isn't saying, well, we're the college for entrepreneurs, but if you want to pursue arts, you can do that too, right? It's staying in one swim lane.
Yep.
This is who we're serving, this is who we're focusing on, and that's how we're positioning our school. And that's where I think these smaller universities or these smaller community colleges really have an edge, right? I remember years ago, and I was a foreign exchange student in Minnesota, and it was in a small town, and their community college there was specialized in law enforcement, right? So you had a lot of people walking around in uniforms on campus, right?
Right.
Because even though they weren't officially police officers yet, they had to get used, because they had to treat the uniform like their second skin,
Yeah.
because they're going to wear it a lot, right?
You see a lot of in high schools too. It's called ROTC, what they
Yep.
get ready for military,
Yep.
and they walk around in these uniforms or at least these shirts that says it. Just
Yep.
to get complete buy-in with the brand or the mission that's
Yep.
in store for them. So, Christian, super episode. Tell us a little bit about Einblick Consulting, your podcast, and how people can connect with you after this.
Yeah, yeah. Once again, thanks so much for having me on your show. So I run a company called Einblick Consulting. So we're specialized in branding and marketing solutions primarily for B2B. So we work with companies in tech, professional services as well. And I run a podcast called B2B Marketers on a Mission. I've been running that for about 5 years. I've had a gentleman by the name of Chris Rapozo on, I think, twice now. Right, so and it's been a great conversation every time. Right, and you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. So my handle is Christian-Klepp-Einblick Consulting. Einblick is spelled EINBLICK, and you can, if so inclined, please also tune into the B2B Marketers on a Mission podcast, which is on Apple and Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite show.
Yep, very good podcast. I have to say so myself. And yes, fun
Thank you.
fact, this is also Christian's second episode on my podcast.
It is, isn't it?
It is, but you came on the marketing show back in the day, like 3 years ago, when it was still branded Another Wave, just a generic marketing. It wasn't education marketing, but we kept in touch, and we are, partners here with our podcast swap. So really
Yep.
appreciate you being on the show as always, and thanks so much for joining. Good luck to Austria and the World Cup, and I will
Yes.
see you next time.
Fingers crossed. Thanks, Chris. Take care.
And that's a wrap for this episode, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to Education Marketing Leader Podcast this week. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it with your friends and your network. And if you ever thought about starting your own podcast, now that you listen to one and you got inspired, reach out to me via DM. We'd love to help you launch your own. We'll take care of everything for you, the scripting, the strategy, the editing, the distribution. All you have to do is show up, connect with your audience, and build your personal brand. So if you're ready for it, let's chat. And for everybody else, we'll see you next time at the Education Marketing Leader Podcast. Take care, friends.